It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor, Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day. So join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. On a Thursday night from the capital city of the great state of South Carolina, Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, Professor Tom Hayes, and the great Brian Leonard. 800-956-7266. Lines are open immediately tonight for your phone calls. Want to jump on board, chime in on something we've been talking about this week, anything you've heard, anything you've seen. Of course, last night's basketball. I was up at Clemson. Tigers very impressive in their win over Georgia Tech. South Carolina, my goodness, what are those guys drinking? Please, NCAA, do not test the South Carolina basketball players right now because I don't know what's in their bloodstream. They pulled one out last night, and you look at the box score, three of their top players hardly contributed anything other than some minutes and some fouls. They had to go deep into their bench, rely on some young guys and some unheralded guys, and, of course, Hassani Gravitt's been good all season, and he was big last night. What a win to go into a tough place like Memorial Gym in Nashville, fall behind by double digits, somehow find a way to win. They are 4-0 in the SEC. Not anybody in their right mind could have thought that coming out of December.
They led for just 2 minutes and 3 seconds of the 40-minute contest that had 55 fouls called in it. You've heard about the Fountain of Youth. Well, the Fountain of Growth is certainly benefiting the Gamecocks, who win by 3. They get 12 of the last 17 points from the free throw line. They get to the line 35 times overall, 23 times in the second half, make 27 of them. And really, after a half where they really couldn't seem to find it, no Chris Silva really contributing at any point in time. He had just 13 minutes. He fouled out basically with a lot of time left on the clock. And Frank Martin made a very strategic sub, putting Alonzo Frink in there with Evan Hinson, A.J. Lawson, Hassani Gravitt, and Keyshawn Bryant. And that number, that 5 pro, that little set of 5, helped South Carolina start on the comeback trend. They took their lumps on the defensive end because of Frank's inability to guard ball screens. But Frank Martin just said, you know what, this is a lineup that is going to give me the best opportunity to score. And they were able to cut their losses and somehow steal a victory in Nashville.
Well, let's face it. What has happened to Vanderbilt is when Garland got injured, they don't have a rudder. They don't have a point guard. We saw last year how South Carolina struggled when they had erratic point guard play. If you stay with Vandy and be within 8 to 10 points with 5 minutes to go, you're probably still going to win because when it comes to them having to make plays down the stretch, they don't have that rudder. South Carolina, I thought Vandy had a great strategy. For whatever reason, Mike Kotsar and Chris Silva love to put the ball on the floor before they go to the basket. Every time they put the ball on the floor, that zone collapsed on them, and they got it knocked away from them. Suddenly, when they had more small ball playing, it actually worked in South Carolina's advantage because they had one more ball handler on the floor, and Vanderbilt didn't have an answer for it defensively. And
we're able to face up to a lot of stuff in the transition game, help themselves out, and like you said, get to the free throw line and put themselves in the driver's seat. Conversely, Clemson gets a much-needed confidence boost with a victory over Georgia Tech.
Yeah, one more thing on USC and looking at that game tonight, because I was at Clemson last night and didn't get a chance to see it live. Well, I saw some of it live, but my attention was diverted to the Clemson game. But watching again today, you talk about a key defensive play when Vanderbilt had the ball with a chance to take the lead in the final seconds, and Lee's got the ball, and he's dribbling up top and starts to make a move into the circle area towards the foul line. Lawson slid over and cut him off and kept his hands down and out of the position where it would look like a touch or a grab and cut off that lane, and Lee had to back up, and he forced a shot, and he missed it. And South Carolina got the rebound, went down and hit the 2 free throws. So just a little thing like that, a very smart defensive play by a freshman might have saved the day because Lee looked like he was going to get into his sweet spot there in the lane and have a really good look at a potential game-winning shot.
The best part of defense is not your hands, it's your feet.
Yeah, he moved very nicely there. As far as Clemson, I still think Clemson's a tournament team. I know they went through a tough stretch to open ACC play. You look at the schedule and where they had to play. You look at their starting 5. Now, they've got to stay healthy. But the starting five, when they're on the floor healthy and playing well together, I think this team's going to find a way to get into the NCAA tournament. That was an excellent performance last night by a team that has beaten Syracuse on the road. Jumped out to a 20-2 lead, withstood a run by Georgia Tech, got the lead down to 5 at halftime, came out in the second half with another big run to push it back to double digits, never let Tech get closer than 8 the rest of the way. And Marquise Reed was just stroking it last night. From his very first shot, you could tell he had that shooter's mindset. Mm-hmm. He had the look that, you know what, everything I'm shooting tonight's going in.
Right.
And pretty much, 10 of 13, 4 of 4 from the line. He was outstanding. And he got some complimentary help as well from Sims and Thomas. And Shelton Mitchell, though he only scored 2 points, 9 assists, no turnovers in 38 minutes. So it was a good performance by Clemson, a lousy performance by the Clemson fans. People, I know it's 9 o'clock, but you do have a good basketball team, and you better enjoy them while you can, because they're going to take a step back after this year when they lose all these players.
They don't care about basketball up there.
No, I'm starting to really, turning out only for the marquee games is not how you support your basketball team. And I know you're a big football school, and you still have football on the mind, but that was a pitiful crowd last night, both in terms of the students and the ticket buying public. There was really nobody there. I don't know what they announced the crowd at, but there was probably 4,000 or 5,000 in the building.
6,693 was the announced attendance.
It was much less than that, and that's really embarrassing for an early season ACC season game when you got a good team and you got a chance to beat a team, kind of get things turned around again, and you don't show up. That's really poor.
I mean, they're just not conditioned to do it. I mean, it's just the way that they just haven't had the kind of team, aside from last year, that is worth showing up for, and they're just not conditioned to spend the money and the time investment that is involved in going and seeing that team. And it's weird. We see this a lot, and Carolina fans are pretty decent at showing up, even when it doesn't necessarily matter. They've had a little bit of a lag in attendance at the beginning of this year, but I think, the Missouri game, they showed up very, very well. And I think over the rest of this season, you're not going to have that issue, especially with some of these weekend games they have coming up. But from the standpoint of where Clemson sits, I don't know what more you need. Brad Brownell has really turned this thing into a fruitful program. The one thing on the floor, turning it back to that I still don't see is I do not see that fourth contributor outside of Reed, Thomas, and pick your poison, whether it's Mitchell, Scar, or Sims. They can't get 4 legit scorers on a night when you play somebody of consequence. In my mind, Pro, that's going to make things very, very difficult for you, because you're not going to get 30 from Reed every night.
I think Sims is the guy. I really do, because when you get down to crunch time in basketball, even in college basketball, the officials, even though we saw that foul fest last night in Nashville, they usually swallow their whistles a lot. And here's a guy with an NBA body that can bang. And when he's good, he's got a touch from 15 feet in. There's your guy right there. He just has to have a more strong mentality to be one of those scorers to take it to the basket.
Well, you mentioned the way that the games are called. It would really surprise people to know that South Carolina only had 3 more fouls called on them against Vanderbilt, but there were 55 fouls called in that game.
Ridiculous.
And it just goes to show you again that things you can count on at home, you can't count on the road in college basketball.
And back to Clemson here, they're going to go only as far as their starting 5 takes them. I know Clyde Trapp prior to the ACC season gave him some good minutes, but you can tell, a coach's bench, when they get into ACC play and tournament play, you can tell if a coach believes in his bench or not. And last night, the starting 5, everybody went at least 20 minutes. The most minutes off the bench was Trapp with 12. Did not get a whole lot of minutes off the bench. And I think the lineup's just going to get shorter and shorter here for them as they move forward. And if they stay healthy and out of foul trouble, I think that 5 can run with most teams in the league.
The fact that they're asking David Scarr to play 40 minutes, something I didn't think we would see at any point last year, is just galling and telling about how short their bench is.
All right, 800-956-7266. Give us a shout.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. I just wanted to touch on one other thing with this basketball. The fact that we had in your game that you were at 35 fouls in 40 minutes, 55 fouls in the Carolina game against Vanderbilt. I mean, are these officials getting a little out of control here, calling it as tight as they are?
Well,
because I don't think that's what college basketball fans want.
Well, you know, the hand check rule creates a lot of fouls. And if you have a crew that's really cognizant of that and is going to be calling it, you have to adjust as a player, of course, after you get a feel for what the officials are going to be doing. I don't think people were at the game I was at last night. I don't think there were too many complaints about the officiating. I think because the home team was doing so well. I mean, when you score the first, I think it was 14 points, and you're up 20-2, you're settling in pretty easily for a good night. Even though it did get a little tighter, I don't think we had too many controversial calls in the Clemson-Georgia Tech game. Now, your game, there was a controversial and very big technical foul.
Yes.
Late in the game on Lee, and that kind of opened the door for the Gamecocks to have a chance to get this thing.
So they were down 5, and Gravitz going to the hole and gets fouled. And basically, as a result of that, has an opportunity basically to get a 5-point swing, basically. And they ended up getting the 2 plus the ball, and then he hit a 3 in order to basically tie the score. I think it was at 68 at that point. They ended up going back up on top, and then back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But from the standpoint of where that was, that really was a big momentum killer. And the technical foul was basically as a result of a taunting. That wasn't necessarily a foul call, but that was a judgment call there by the officiating. Again, there was no flow last night. And I remember watching the game last week against Mississippi State where it seemed like they were letting everything go. And I even made the comment on Twitter last night. I said, this is the kind of game where the Gamecocks thrive. And last night watching that game, I mean, that's the kind of night where if they're not getting those calls or not getting that kind of leeway, they're not going to have that much success.
Well, you know, other than the fact that Keyshawn Bryant still gets a little nervous because I've seen him shoot free throws before, and he's got good form to him.
Missed 4 in a row.
But he missed 4 in a row. But the Gamecocks, it sort of ended up being their game because they were stroking free throws like nobody's business. I mean, the last 12 shots, they almost hit nothing but netting on all 12 of them.
12 of the last 17 points, all coming at the strike.
Gamecock bench continues to be huge. Hassani Gravitz got to get consideration for all SEC, one of the teams
he's going to be
when the season is over,
because
he has just been I think they do, but he has just been so solid. And this is a guy that I thought last year was so misplaced, being forced to play the point and did not handle that. It's just not his position. He's a scoring guard. He's very good in the up-tempo game. He likes an up-tempo game. His outside shot has improved tremendously over the last 2 years. And, you know, South Carolina right now, when we talked with Frank Martin earlier this week and talked about guys having their roles now, and they know their roles, and he is very comfortable coming off the bench. Same thing with Philippe Hasse, who's given them, you know, so much more. He got off to a good start last year, kind of hit the freshman wall. He's come back this year and has given them some really consistent minutes. And again, to go on the road and win with Silva not contributing much of anything, Kotsar not contributing much of anything, Campbell not contributing much of anything. They played 9 guys last night, and Evan Henson was the other guy off the bench that got time, and he played 14 minutes. So, you know, Silva only played 13 minutes. Of the guys that played last night, Silva played the fewest minutes because of foul trouble. My point is, they went deep into their bench, and they've got major contributions and major minutes. And even though Alonzo Frank was hurt, he's got a bad ankle and did not score, he did give them 4 points and a big body out there to bang around a little while.
Yeah, Hasse, the guys who did the game last night, Roy Philpott and Mark Wise, they really loved Hasse, and he's been getting a lot of love. His defensive game is not as necessarily good as, say, Mike Kotsar's is, but he does enough defensively to warrant him getting more minutes because of what he can bring offensively. He has more offensive confidence than Kotsar. And the other fact, too, you mentioned the way the minute distribution happened. Craig Campbell only played 15 minutes. And so that long stretch when it was Lawson and Gravitt on the floor together, with Lawson running point and Gravitt playing off the ball, that's, I think, their best guard combination, and that's what needs to be in crunch time.
Well, see, the key point about Hasse is the fact that he's what you call a high post center. You get him 14, 15 feet on out. He can shoot the three, but he's an excellent passer for a big man, and of course has different angles to pass because of his height. The key point to South Carolina offensively right now is they're closer, and I'm not talking about in wins, but the philosophy that Frank Martin has with his Final Four team, and that is 2 point guards on the floor at one time. See, when he had PJ and Sindarius, there were 3 point guards on the floor at one time. Nobody got tired handling the ball. You can selectively say who's going to handle the press this time. And so I think that keeps the guys fresh and keeps their shot fresh down the stretch.
It helps that Hasse, translated in Chilean, is microwave man.
Well, that fits.
Yeah.
Well, and, having guys that can penetrate and dish, and then when you've got guys standing outside like Hasse who can make an outside shot, make the defense collapse in on the guard who was driving and dish it out, and you're seeing Bryant knock down shots. Of course, Gravitt's been knocking down shots. It's really working for him right now. It's really been an amazing turnaround, totally unexpected. Right now, we're sort of having the same thoughts that we had 2 years ago as they started putting win after win together, and you kept wondering, when's it going to start coming apart for this team? How much longer can they continue to play at this level? And last night was the perfect opportunity for them to say, 3-0 start was really good. We don't win here in Nashville. They hadn't won there since 2010, and this is a tough place to win. And, we're down a dozen points here in the second half, and just say, okay, we'll try and win something at LSU this weekend. To find a way to win that game, you talk about some character, and Frank Martin can point to that and to his, 7 years in building his program, doing it his way, as hard-headed as he might be with his players during games and in practice. The toughness that he instills in his players really showed last night. That might have been, you talk about your culture victory.
Yes. And
a victory won just because the way you're coached. You might have to give that as much credit as anything else.
Two things. I don't think anybody now is saying that Frank Martin can't coach basketball anymore. Like, that's the thing. The one thing I think this is doing is, like you said, validating why he's here and why he is able to pick the players he wants and why he picks the players he wants, because he sees the ability for development. He doesn't want guys who are finished products.
But don't think he wouldn't have loved to have had Aaron Neesmith in a Gamecock uniform.
But
dude's good.
But here's the thing: if you have Aaron Neesmith, guess what you don't have? You don't have AJ Lawson. AJ Lawson, I think you'd rather have him the way that this team fits. AJ Lawson fits on this team better. And again, that Frank Martin recruits to a fit. And here's the other part of this.
He's a point guard in a shooting guard's body.
And here's the other part of this from South Carolina's perspective too, for where he sits. I didn't think that it would be this quick, but I had a feeling that there would be a point in time during the conference season where they would come together. I didn't think that they'd have it all together right now, but it's pretty easy to see that they do.
Well, these freshmen care, and apparently they have a strong learning curve. If they had Moss healthy, what would they be doing? Now, the key point is now, which is a good problem for Frank to have, and he's thinking about it, what do I do when Manias comes back? What do I have? Do I have?
Well, he was asked that question Monday at the presser, and he said, well, first of all, Mania, he had a test earlier this week. We've heard he didn't say anything about it. So we don't know how he did with that quad test. If the quad was within 85% of the other, they were going to let him start doing some practicing. It was going to be 3 or 4 practices once he's able to practice before you could start getting him into a game. I would imagine that he won't go right back into the starting lineup. No. I would imagine him when he's healthy coming off the bench.
Amazing.
All right, 800-956-7266 is our phone number. We're going to hear from Frank Martin from last night, also from Brad Brownell from last night. Mike Morgan At the top of the hour, Morgan on the move. Of course, recruiting for you as well. Be back in just a moment.
Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. One more on the Gamecock men. We're going to hear from Frank Martin as well, as long as a couple of other notes. Is just we see the difference, and it's subtle. The difference between bad coaching and bad players. A lot of people thought that bad coaching led to only going 17-16 last year. It's bad players last year. You had a lot of Band-Aid guys and guys who were just bodies and not players. Now that Frank has players, he can run his style. It's more up-tempo. It's fun. It's great defense. And this is the greatest recruiting tool that he could possibly have.
What was the line he used to use at Kansas State when people questioned him? Not bad for a high school coach. Because see, everybody say you only been a head coach in high school, so he used to say.
Well, last night was their kind of game. Last night was, of course, the tempo was the way they like it, but they like those games. I'm not going to say they like a lot of games with a lot of fouls and things of that nature, but last night's game just looked like a physical dogfight kind of game. It wasn't a real smoothie, pretty type of game where there was a real flow to it. It was stop and start with all the fouling. And somehow they were able to make it a manageable game in the last 5 minutes. And, they caught a couple of breaks here or there. They got a couple of key calls. And the main thing is some guys made some shots. They had some big shots in the last 2 or 3 minutes and hit some big free throws as well. All right. Phone number 800-956-7266. Lines are open if you'd like to join us. Our poll question into its last day for this week. Well, tomorrow will be the last day. Got one more day left. How should University of South Carolina athletic teams be identified? We've had about 3,200 votes. Big response on this poll question this week. And it remains 42% of the voters say just call them South Carolina. 31% say call them USC. 14% say U of SC. And 13% say Carolina. So the overwhelming majority like South Carolina or USC. A relatively small number favor U of SC based on our poll question of the week here at Sports Talk SC.
Part of the attempted rebrand from South Carolina.
Yeah. Also, we must mention the Gamecock women tonight because they've had an 8-game winning streak, but they run into a wall tonight. That means to be a term politically, wall now.
Yes.
But Mississippi State, of course, has the big girl. I forgot her name, 6'7", but she's not a adroit person. You can dribble around her, but South Carolina saw themselves with that tough schedule lose about 3 out of 5, drop all the way to number 25. Now they're back to number 15, but now they run into number 7 in a tough place to play in Starkville.
16-1 on the season is Mississippi State. Very, very tough matchup. The Clemson women with a chance to make it 4 in a row in ACC play after losing their opening game against Syracuse. They've got wins over Virginia, ranked road victories over Miami and Florida State. They could be getting some top 25 love if they continue their hot streak. They play Georgia Tech today and Sunday at Pittsburgh.
This Mississippi State team, though, my goodness, in SEC play so far, they're averaging 91 points per game. This is going to be a big test in terms of South Carolina's defense. They're making over 50% of their shots. Mississippi State is in league play. And, this is a big rival game. These are two of the elite teams in the country. They have faced each other in some big games in recent years. Absolutely.
National runner-up each of the last 2 years, Mississippi State.
And SEC championship games. So the Gamecocks have had the upper hand in those big games. The Mississippi State is going to be fired up and excited about this one. And it's going to tip off at 7 o'clock, and it's going to be televised on the ESPN's the mothership, the big channel.
Tiara McCowan is the girl.
Big one.
All right, 800-956-7266 is the phone number here on Sports Talk. We'll hear from Frank Martin coming up in just a moment. I wanted to mention a couple of other things that I don't think we had a chance to get to this week. No, we're good. Let's go ahead and get to Frank Martin because he's worth hearing from coming off the big. Here's the other thing, too. They're 4-0. They've got 2 SEC road wins against Florida and Vanderbilt. I mean, that is such a major check mark off your list. When you go down, look at your schedule in the preseason, you say, okay, can win here, can win here, can you win here? Nobody thought they'd win at Gainesville. Nobody thought they'd win at Vanderbilt. Those are 2 big check marks off the schedule.
And Frank Martin's squad, again, leading for only 2 minutes and 3 seconds of that game. They had a lead at 18:32 of the first half, and then not again until 23 seconds to play in regulation. The Gamecocks now 4-0 in conference play. Here's the head man.
Obviously, Vanderbilt is real good here at home, and they're looking for that first win, and they're going to come out and get after us, and they did. And we spoke about not getting wrapped up in the emotion of the moment, the game, the score, just stay the course, and it's a 40-minute game. And luckily, Sonny, AJ, and then Felipe made some shots in the second half to kind of make us feel a little bit better. And then we guarded a little better, and the zone really helped us too.
Frank, especially in the first half, seemed like they're really trying to double Chris and Mike. I'm sure you guys are prepared for that, but that was the problem with those guys trying to get off those double.
No, it's that's what they do. They've done it all year, and we've been dealing with people doubling the post a lot because we're one of the few teams in the country still post up. So people fight what we do by doubling the low post. We just made bad decisions. It's I'm talking about the guys with the ball. We just didn't make good decisions. We made an adjustment in the second half from which side of the floor to enter it into the post, but we still didn't get much done with post ups today. And then once we're getting nothing out of Chris and nothing out of Mike, I decided to kind of open the floor and then just countered our post ups where we're trying to attack the paint off the bounce and cuts and we did that.
How tough is it to get into the flow of a game when it's cold like that?
Yeah, they got to make those calls. Both teams fouled. I mean, it is what it is. We fouled. I'm not going to sit here and they call fouls on us and we committed. Anytime a guy dribbles the ball and you put two hands on him, it's a hand check. And we did that today. Give Saban and Lee credit. They spaced us and they just drove us, and we didn't do a very good job of guarding the ball. And when you do that, the referees have a duty to make that call, and they made it. I'll let Bryce answer questions for the Vanderbilt calls, but I thought our guys drove the ball too. That's part of the game. It's we played a game earlier this year where both teams combined to shoot 20 free throws, but does some games flow the way this one did? The way we defend, we force people to drive the ball. So on games where we don't guard the ball the right way, we probably are going to end up fouling, and that's what we did today. That's why I went zone so much in the second half.
Worry about any of the kids, maybe feeling their oats a little bit at the start, just because of the way you guys started the season. You think everybody would be pretty grounded? Now,
you guys can't run around and say that I'm the biggest grouch in the history of mankind and then think I'm going to let these guys kind of back off. You can't say I'm a grouch and I'm a mean guy and then turn around and think that I'm going to go in there and patty cake at practice the next couple of days, Now, we don't know. I'm being a smart aleck. We don't know. I'm going to run practice whether we win or lose the same way. The players will tell you my demeanor never changes based on the result of the previous game. And we're going to go out, and I got a feeling these guys are going to practice well. And whether we win or lose at LSU, it's not going to be because of lack of effort or lack of preparation. At least I don't expect it to be.
Just don't get anybody else hurt, Frank. Be serious.
I just think it's bound to happen in his practices. His practices must be so brutal.
It wasn't even him. The last time with Kine, it was a workout where there were not even any coaches gets hurt.
All right, so the Gamecocks go to LSU, and LSU is also undefeated in SEC play. I think the undefeated teams left in the league right now in terms of league play would be South Carolina, Tennessee,
and LSU.
Those
are the only ones.
So South Carolina's in some pretty heavy company there. Kentucky's right there. Auburn. Now, I think Auburn and Kentucky play this weekend, do they not?
I believe that's correct.
Is that on the schedule? I think so. That'll be a dandy. Virginia and Duke play this weekend. That's going to be big. Clemson is off this weekend. They get their break for this weekend, and they return to action Tuesday at Florida State.
Quickly on LSU, not a good defending team, also a team that turns the ball over a lot. 20% of their possessions end in turnovers.
All righty, 800-956-7266. Got some recruiting coming up. Some news out of Rock Hill on a one-time, big-time football recruit who's in some hot water. And Nick Saban is pissed.
Yes.
I mean, he's pissed pretty much every day, but he's a little more put off with somebody than normal after what happened on his staff.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, as we continue here on a Thursday. We're going to hear in our second hour from Mike Morgan, his usual Thursday spot with us, Morgan on the Move. A new book on Clemson's championship from the Greenville News. Both Manny Robinson and Scott Keefe are penning that. Scott's going to join us second hour. And, of course, the money coach, Fran Halloran, will join us as well.
Also, we'll hear from Brad Brownell from the Tigers' win last night, and recruiting coming your way. A lot of things to fill you in on, as, you know, this second signing period, it really has just become an afterthought. It gets so lost with what happens in December now. But there are still some players out there, and USC is still recruiting a small number, and Clemson's recruiting even a smaller number for the February signing period. But both are now turning their attentions full-time to the next class. And you got a lot of juniors now, rising seniors, guys who are currently juniors, who will be making visits to South Carolina and Clemson over the next 3 weekends.
But no officials at Clemson in the spring.
Of course not. No, Sweeney does not do that.
He does not do that.
Yeah.
He wants you to pay your way and want to be there.
Are you arguing with the results?
I'm not.
Fly commercial.
I'm just speaking the truth.
Let's go to Mike in Sumter. Hit a quick phone call here on Sports Talk, then recruiting. Mike, welcome in to Sports Talk. How are you?
All right, buddy. How you doing?
We're good. How you doing?
Oh, we hanging in there. How about you?
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
I was just curious. I don't know if y'all know, what was the bonus that Dabo got for winning the ACC and the championship game and all his assistants?
$250, I think, for winning the championship. $250,000. Because I remember seeing that thrown out there because it was the same amount of money that he needed on the mortgage of the house that his childhood family got evicted from, or whatever. It was something Darren Ovell put out. But I know it was $250 for the championship game. It was a stupid little corollary thing.
Yeah, you know, the contract's going to be renegotiated again. If you heard Dan Radakovich with us last night,
here it is: $250 for the national title, $200 for the semifinal win, $200 for the appearance. So all told, $750. All told, the conference title was $50,000 for appearing, $150 for winning. So $950,000. Yeah, that's not
we'll
bad.
Make it an even.
Also,
we'll make it even million in college.
He does okay.
He did get a National Coach of the Year award, so that's $50,000. So that's $1 million. He also got the Conference Coach of the Year, so that's another $25,000. He's getting a lot top Mike.
Okay.
Yeah, he does not need a GoFundMe to help him feed his children.
On top of the $7.5 million he was guaranteed, or $8 million he was guaranteed.
Well, maybe all those can get a little loan from him.
He could fund a small country, I have a feeling. His personal growth, his personal GNP,
gross domestic product, or gross national product,
gross GNP, whatever it is, it's pretty high.
It's GNP. It's not gross GNP. It's just GNP.
No, but it stands for something. It stands for
gross national product or gross
right.
domestic product, depending on what you're looking at.
Yeah. Anyway, he's got a personal one that's very high. Thank you very much. 800-956-7266 is our phone number here on Sports Talk. Give you the recruiting report for tonight, which in and of itself is a valuable commodity.
I don't know if it's that valuable.
Depends on who you're talking to. Defensive lineman Jaquez Sorrells out of Winter Park, Florida. He's one that South Carolina is still actively recruiting. And they've been on him for a long time, and they've built a good relationship with him. And he's coming back for his official visit this weekend. No stranger to the USC campus. This will be his fourth visit. Last summer, he was in for a camp. He returned for a recruiting event in July. Then he attended a game this past season. He is down to USC, Penn State, and Alabama, and he's going to see each one more time over the next 3 weekends. His recruiting coordinator at Winter Park, Coach Kit Hill, says that he and his mom are talking regularly, trying to figure out what's best. And Penn State was in his office yesterday, Wednesday. Coach was defensive line coach, Alabama as well. Now, what's funny was he told me the Alabama defensive coordinator was supposed to come in, but then he left to go to Miami, right? Well, not isn't that right? Didn't he leave to go to Miami?
Sounds about right.
So I don't know that he made it in for a call on Mr. Sorrells. Will Muschamp and Travaris Robinson met with the Sorrells and his mother Sunday for an in-home visit. The player told the coach that he thought it went well. He likes Muschamp, and he thought the visit went well. This is a kid that's really big on relationships, and the reason these are his final 3, he could have opened it back up, as coach said, and welcomed in many more suitors, but he didn't like the fact that after signing day, he started getting all these calls from people trying to get in. He's like, well, where were you prior to? So he's sticking with the 3 that have been with him the longest. So the official visits are going to really be important. It's South Carolina this weekend, Penn State next weekend, and then Alabama.
I think they're in good shape.
Who's that?
South Carolina.
You base that on your what?
Gut. I have a gut.
Do you? You do have a gut.
I have a gut.
Yeah. Now, recruiters have been going through Hammond Academy this week, checking in on a pair of 2020 prospects, defensive end Jordan Birch, defensive lineman Alex Huntley. Brandon Streeter of Clemson was in Monday. Georgia outside linebackers coach Dan Lanning also was in. LSU head coach Ed Orgeron was in today. You know, I noticed that I was over in that area of town, and I went by, what's the chicken restaurant that serves the Popeyes? Yeah. There was a long line there at Popeyes waiting to get some of that Cajun chicken. I think Orgeron might have been at the front of the line.
Popeyes. Now you're getting into my territory there, where I'll be at this weekend.
Tennessee coach Jeremy Pruitt may be in on Friday. Oklahoma head coach Lincoln Riley and assistant Shane Beamer
It's a lot.
plan to visit next week.
How'd your quarterbacks?
And Clemson coach Dabo Sweeney may be at one of Birch's basketball games next week. Clemson is not really recruiting Huntley very much. They're more interested in Birch, and Huntley is visiting USC Saturday. USC offered 2021 defensive end Jack Holyfield of Shelby, North Carolina. He's the brother of Virginia Tech linebacker Dax Holyfield. And I hope his shoulder's good.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need the shoulder issue.
Those Holyfields and those shoulders, man, you got to worry about that.
Just as long as you don't have any private practices.
There it is.
Oh, I get it.
Oh,
It took me a second to catch up on that.
That was not meant to.
It took me a second to figure out.
That was not a lawyer joke, Corn. That was
pros out there somewhere in left field. I'm trying to figure out what part of the left field.
He was very much. He's in the ballpark. Very much in the ballpark.
USC offered 2022 offensive lineman Fisher Anderson, 6'5", 250 of Franklin, Tennessee. USC the first to offer. 2020 cornerback Fred Davis of Jacksonville plans to visit Clemson on January 26th. If you're not aware, that is Clemson's big recruiting weekend for the juniors. As we mentioned last night, running back Michael Dukes of First Baptist take an official visit to Clemson this coming weekend. Will Muschamp was in to see 2020 running back Don Chaney Jr. of Miami, not actually see him. We talk about the 2020 guys and coaches at the schools. It's still too early for them to have that direct contact, but they can go to the school and check on him. And he is coming in for a visit to South Carolina Saturday, according to Gamecock Central. His father played for the Gamecocks. And 2020 running back Thaddeus Franklin of Hollywood, Florida, was offered by USC. He has been committed to Miami, and Clemson offered 2020 receiver Xavier Henderson, who is 6'4", 185 of Miami. They like those big, tall receivers.
Former South Carolina target in some hot water. Quickly, Corn.
Yeah, this story out of the Rock Hill Herald coming out this afternoon. It is Jamario Holly, one-time USC commitment, a wide receiver from Northwestern High School. He's been charged with 2 counts of assault and battery by a mob with bodily injury and malicious injury to property. This according to Captain Mark Bollinger of the Rock Hill Police Department. He was identified, Holly was, as one of a group of 4 to 6 people who punched and kicked a teen victim at Spencer Park in Rock Hill Sunday afternoon during a basketball game, according to a police incident report. Quote, Holly and the others stomped on his face, the report states. Quote, Holly kicked the front door several times. The victim went inside and locked the door, and it said here, quote, Holly kicked the front door several times, making a hole in the bottom of the door, and the victim identified Holly by name on the incident report. Now, these are considered misdemeanor charges against him. Top of the hour break. We'll be back.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
And welcome back into Sports Talk, everybody. South Carolina Radio Network here on a Thursday night. And being the male chauvinist pigs that we are, we have got both women's games up on the big screens here in our studios. The Clemson women are trailing Georgia Tech 5-2. The South Carolina women are trailing Mississippi State 2-0. Mississippi State just had a starter go down in the first few seconds with a leg injury, and she had to be helped off the court. Speaking of male chauvinist pigs, let's welcome in Mike Morgan. Another edition of Morgan on the Move here on Sports Talk.
It's brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union, the mortgage team more equipped than ever to help you with the mortgage process. FoundersFCU.com/mortgage. And by BP Skinner Clothiers, was just there earlier today. In fact, people nationwide get their custom-made suits and accessories from Brent Skinner. Anywhere you are in the country, Brent will come to you, or you can find them in the Vista or online at bpskinnerclothiers.com to set up an appointment.
So where's it going to go? It goes into Starks. Starks with 2. Starks with 1. Starks for the win. He got it! He got it! It counts! It counts from 3! What an incredible shot by TJ Starks!
That's your guy.
Mike Morgan calling the action last weekend of a nail biter. Mike, good call.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. By the way, you said the score was 2-0. I have to know who's winning 2-0. I can't go on without this pertinent information. Who has the 2-0 lead in the basketball game?
Mississippi State.
It would be the Lady Bulldogs of Starkville.
So they're on a 2-0 run, just for confirmation.
That's correct.
That's correct.
That is correct.
Now, you'll let me know mid-segment if there's a lead change and somebody goes up 4-2.
Well, it's 4-0
now.
Oh, my goodness. Well, that changes everything. That changes.
4-2 now.
Man.
South Carolina just got their first 2 from Taya Cooper.
And will you be carrying on this comedy act at a lounge at an airport near us anytime soon so we can come out and watch?
I might. I'm flying into Austin tomorrow. I might give it a shot over there. You know, it's kind of a progressive crowd over there in Austin, Texas. I might try out that routine.
Yeah.
Make sure you head to Lane's while you're there in College Station, please.
That is barbecue? That is
the chicken finger joint. Lane's.
Oh, that is the chicken finger joint. Okay. I've been to Austin a couple of times on my way to doing football games, and I've done 6th Street and I've done a few of the staples, but I'm ready to try something new.
Well,
now, why are you going to Austin?
Lane's is in College Station. That's
why are you going to Austin? You doing Texas
tomorrow? Because you can't.
Yeah.
Because you can't fly directly into College Station.
Right.
At least, well, not on any airline, actually, not from Atlanta. So rather than do the American airline, this is something everybody in your audience can appreciate it.
Yeah.
I have absolutely no status on American Airlines. So literally, I will be the guy that has to check his bag. I'll be sitting in the middle of the back seat right by the toilet. Or I can fly Delta direct into Austin, the city I happen to like, and then take a little 2-hour voyage from Austin, Texas to College Station.
Rainy Street, very highly recommended in Austin. Very, very right.
All right, let's get to some serious stuff that people do care about, and that is the college basketball world and games last night in South Carolina. 4-0 in the SEC. I mean, nobody could see that coming, and just they're just playing with a lot of grit and determination right now, overcoming some injuries and making shots and making free throws, and that's why they're 4-0.
Well, first off, you're absolutely right. I mean, no one saw that coming, and I mean no one, considering a number of different factors, considering the start they got off to, considering kind of the national media, and even I would say Southeastern media's low expectations of the team this year, considering the quality of opponents that they faced in that 4-game stretch. 2 or 3 of them had I would say 2 of them had the potential to be NCAA tournament teams. Vandy right now, that Darius Garland is reeling, and Mizzou is Mizzou. But I don't think anybody would see that coming. And it's a credit to Frank Martin that he's been able to kind of get his team to refocus. You know, when you have a rough start at a conference, the one thing you can always tell your team in basketball, unlike, say, football, is that, okay, now the real season begins. We can go ahead. We got a fresh slate, which isn't entirely true because all those games that you lose in November, December do count. But you can regroup, recalibrate, and try to focus on conference play specifically. And that, I think, combined with the fact they've gotten healthier, combined with the fact that the freshmen are starting to play more like sophomores or juniors, all that combined has allowed this team to play, I think, at its peak. I mean, I don't think with what they have and what they don't have, you could ask for them to play much better. They're not going to be pretty. They're not going to win games pretty. You saw that again last night against Vanderbilt. But we've seen over the years, Frank Martin is a master at winning games that aren't always pretty and is very good at winning close games. If you can keep it close, Frank does a good job of late game management, and his defense usually picks up pivotal stops in the closing seconds of the game. And I think all that happened in the case last night. All that has happened in a number of games so far this year.
9-8 Mississippi State over South Carolina. It's a good one.
I mean, I'm not pulling for Mississippi State.
It certainly sounded that way. It sounded like you were pulling.
No, I know. I predict South Carolina is going to score a 3-pointer, and if my math is correct, they'll go up 11-9.
What can you tell us about?
That's impossible because Mississippi State's already got 10 points. Oh, you know what?
Oh, my goodness. All right, I'm off.
They just hit a shot in the lane. It's 10-10.
What can you tell us about this LSU team that South Carolina will face in Baton Rouge on Saturday?
Yeah, I've had them 3 times already, including twice in the Orlando tournament. They are, after Tennessee, they're as good as any team in this league. They are as talented. They are as connected as any team in the Southeastern Conference. They've been flying under the radar for a number of different reasons, one of which we haven't seen LSU being irrelevant in college basketball for a while. The last time they got any attention, it was because they had the number 1 pick in the draft in Ben Simmons and still failed to make the NCAA tournament. That was the Johnny Jones era. This is the Will Wade era, and it's a different one in terms of overall talent and in terms of the way they play, and I would dare say the coaching overall. So it's a very dangerous game. I think it's easily going to be one of Carolina's most difficult games this year.
You mentioned Tennessee. Rick Barnes, tremendous coach, Providence, Clemson, Texas. Texas, I won't say they ran him out on a rail, but they kind of escorted him out. And his team seems to have grabbed his attitude that, look, I can still coach. I'm still one of the best. And I'm going to take a team, not named Texas, back to the Final Four.
You know, he's won wherever he's been, and sometimes I feel like I'm overkill in my praise for Rick Barnes because I've been doing it since he was a coach at Clemson. I thought the Tennessee hire was so underrated. I think a lot of people looked at that hire as, here's a guy that's past his prime. It's a swan song deal. He'll coach 4 years, pick up some bucks, and then he'll head back to either Hickory, North Carolina, or a beach somewhere. That if you thought that, then you don't know Rick Barnes, and you certainly don't know his ability. I think he saw Tennessee, and I did a lot of those games those first couple of years, where they quite frankly didn't have a chance to win a lot of those conference games. They were just so outmatched, and he was left less than a stellar roster. But what Rick Barnes does virtually everywhere he goes, first of all, he plays that underdog role extremely well. His 3 stars are going to beat your 5 stars. He's been doing that much of his collegiate coaching career. And again, that's what they're doing now. They don't have 5-star guys. They don't have a lottery pick. They probably don't have a first-round pick on that roster, but they've got good college basketball players that are well coached and play within a system that Rick Barnes has his hands on everything. They have bought in to Rick Barnes. Rick Barnes has bought into that that's a group of players, and you see the results on the floor. I mean, right? I knew they would be the top team coming in. Quite honestly, I underestimated how big the gap is, because when I look at Tennessee and I compare them to the next tier of teams, LSU, Auburn, Kentucky, I don't even think it's that close right now. It's up to those other teams to start picking up their play if they're going to be in the caliber of Tennessee.
Yeah. It seems like Admiral Schofield's been there about 7-8 years, as people like to say. He came in as what? A
seaman.
A seaman. Yeah, now he's an admiral. Yeah, it seems like he's been there forever. Hang on, Mike. You got a couple more minutes?
Sure.
All right. Georgia Tech's up on Clemson 8-7. Just so you'll be aware of what's happening over at Little John Coliseum. We'll talk about the Tiger men, and also want to get Mike's take on the Kentucky-Auburn game and this upcoming regional in Columbia, and what has to happen to ensure big crowds in Columbia for that. We'll be right back.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, as we come to you on this Thursday night. Still plenty to get to. A new Clemson book from Scott Kiefer, Fran Halloran, the money coach. We'll hear from Brad Brownell later on in the segment. We'll finish things up with Mike Morgan. And Mike, we were talking a little bit about it before the break with Auburn playing Kentucky this weekend. That's the next game on South Carolina's schedule following this weekend. What do you know about the Tigers of Auburn?
Very explosive. They can take your breath away in the first 5 minutes of a game if you're not careful. They've got athletes all over the place, and if they get hot from three, they're really, really hard to beat. They take a ton of threes. They're a volume shooting team, but that's not to say that they're inaccurate. Guys like Bryce Brown, he's been prolific. Okeke now has kind of added that to his game. They've got Wiley back. Remember, he was the kid who was ineligible last year due to the whole FBI probe and everything else that was going on with Chuck Person over there. So they've got a legitimate rim protector in Wiley. There's not many weaknesses on that team other than they don't seem to play nearly as good on the road as they do at home. But in terms of 1 through 10 talent-wise, yeah, they are really good. They're certainly one of the best in the league.
Gamecocks know that firsthand because they split with them last year, winning at CLA.
All right, Mississippi State's up on South Carolina 17-16 and what's becoming a boxing match. Very physical game at the hump. Clemson down, I think it's 5 to Georgia Tech in their women's game. 14-9, 5. Mike, I wanted to ask you about Clemson men. I was up there last night watching them take down Georgia Tech and got off to a great start, and Reed was outstanding all game long. He's got a very short bench, but a pretty good starting 5. But, you know, you got Reed, who's had a knee, and you got Mitchell, who's also had some injury concerns, and Thomas as well with an ankle. I mean, can they hold it together, basically going with a 5-man group out there and get their way back into the NCAA tournament?
I think that's the key question. And, you know, will it hold up over an 18-game slate, which I guess next year is going to be 20, right, in the ACC? In a really deep conference, it's going to be tough. You know, the thing I love about Brad Brownell's group is that they're old. They got a bunch of 5th-year guys and juniors, and you mentioned the 2 key guys. The fact that both of them came back was a huge. It's almost like a recruiting get.
Yeah.
Even though they're already on the roster, you're talking about 2 guys that have already graduated. So they obviously could have decided to quit and not even quit, but just move on to something else. Try to play pro ball overseas. I don't think either one of those guys are NBA guys, but the fact that he got him back, that keeps Clemson in the game. And, you know, I think when you're coming off an NCAA tournament appearance and the Sweet 16, you know how Carolina fans can speak to this. You go to one Final Four, and then your fan base expects it to be a tournament team every year. And I wonder if maybe the Clemson fan base kind of feels the same way. You get a taste of that tournament success. You figure, well, hey, we've arrived. We should be there every year. Reality is, for most programs, that's not the case.
Correct.
There's going to be a little bit of dip, and usually it's because you lose some key players from that team. Clemson's got many of those guys back, but they don't have a lot of depth, and they play in a stacked ACC. So I think the true indicator to that question will be when we're talking in mid-February, see how they're holding up then after logging all those minutes. And one thing's for sure, they simply cannot afford an injury to one of those 2 guys. Otherwise, I think it's lights out.
Mike, as always, we appreciate you being with us. Have yourself a great call there at Texas A&M. Enjoy the trip. We'll catch you next week.
Okay, guys. Sounds good.
Thank you.
I might let you go on that trip next year.
What's that?
College Station. Since you loved it so much, you haven't been in a couple of years.
Actually, I decide who goes. So
that's not true.
I'll look at the schedule. I'll let you know
who's
going to be going where.
That's
so
not
you
true.
just enjoy your little trip to New Orleans, and when you get back, I'll have the schedule. I'll print it out for you. He'll be sitting here waiting for you. By the way, I wanted to mention that Joe Lenardi, in his bracketology earlier this week, still has only Wofford in from the state. As far as the Columbia Regional, he's got Duke in as a number 1 seed, and he's got Virginia in as a number 1 seed. And you got Detroit Mercy, you got Ole Miss, you got UCF, you got Wagner, Ohio State, and LSU. So I'm just thinking about in terms of the attendance, and Duke will bring a fair amount of people. They're not like North Carolina and Kentucky. They don't. I mean, they travel pretty big, but I don't think they travel like the Kentucky and North Carolina people do.
They have sidewalk fans.
Yeah,
you'll have a lot of walk-ups.
That's what I say. You have people who are Duke fans.
I think you got to have a Tobacco Road big boy team in Columbia, one of the marquee teams. You just can't rely on Virginia, perhaps, being a number one seed here with maybe somebody out of the SEC. You need one of those Tobacco Road teams. All right, speaking of Clemson, Brad Brownell last night, after watching his team take down Georgia Tech and get their first ACC win of the season.
Thought our seniors, especially the two guards, were outstanding. Shelton really took care of it, 9 assists, no turnovers, and Marquise got going early and was obviously a huge factor at the beginning of both halves. We were outstanding and played about as well as we can play. So good win against a team that really defends well. They're hard to score against. So I thought we played a great game offensively tonight.
Coach, that zone there is so effective against Syracuse. What did you do so well against that, especially early?
I thought we had good ball movement. I thought we mixed some things in, some motion cutting, a couple sets. Got a nice mix of some threes. I thought we got to the middle some. I thought we got to the post a little bit. Just I thought our guys were patient. We had a couple bad possessions in the second half, but sometimes that's going to happen when you face it as much as we face it in this, in the game, because they play it a lot and they change it. So it's not, every possession, exactly what you're going to get. So your guys got to make adjustments on the fly. And I just thought we got a lot of nice different options out of our zone offenses tonight.
You knew coming in, you probably needed to get off to a fast start. You needed Marquise to play well.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, I think he's had a couple tough shooting games, and obviously he's, teams are guarding him hard. I thought Shelton did a really good job of finding him some, and I thought we ran a couple nice things for him, and he jumped up and made shots, and things look better. There are some of the shots that we got against Virginia, we just didn't make them, and today we did. And sometimes when you make a couple early, it makes it easier for the next guy, because he's seen a couple balls go in, and that's really, I thought, part of what happened to us today.
Brad, Banks seemed to get going later in the game, but it seemed like the first half you guys had him inside the paint under control. What was it you were doing to keep him out of that paint?
I think, we didn't have our pickup point was a little bit back. We weren't out getting extended. They run a lot of the Princeton action, and there's a lot of back cutting, and it's easy to get back cut. A lot of times in their possessions, they're great cutting off the post, whether he's low, whether he's high. There's always somebody cutting to the basket. And so I thought we did some good things that way. When you have a lead, then it's hard. Guys guys who are behind then get a little more aggressive sometimes. And defensively, then you're trying to guard hard without fouling. And the mentality of the offense is you don't have as much to lose. And, so guys, that's part of the reason why there are so many comebacks. It's almost like the mentality changes when you get down double figures. You just get in attack mode. I thought they did a good job of that. And, obviously the end of the first half, we kind of let some things get away from us when Eli got into foul trouble. And then in the second half later, they hung in there by kind of getting to the basket a little bit. And we were just kind of didn't want to give up threes because we got a lead. So now we're just kind of playing individually on the ball and trying not to foul. And sometimes we did. And it's just harder to guard that way.
How big is it psychological to hit the road 1-3 rather than 0-4?
Yeah, I mean, it's more of just, rewarding the guys for hard work. You know what I mean? I think you work hard, and sometimes you're not rewarded, with a win. And it's just not as easy to always go back to work excited. And, when you're not excited like that, you don't get better. And so you need to have the energy. And I talked a lot to my team today about our spirit. The last thing I said leading the locker room was spirit. I want us to be a team that plays with spirit. We're going to show people that despite some losses, we're still a very spirited group, and we're competing, and we're going to have good body language, and we're going to fight, and we're going to have energy. And for most of the game, I thought we did that. And so I was really proud of our team.
Okay, Brad Brownell feeling a little bit better about things. He's got some time to give his guys some rest and get a little bit healthy before they have to go play another tough road game down at Florida State on Tuesday. We'll be back, going to talk about a new book highlighting Clemson's championship season. All right, in Starkville, it's a very good win. Mississippi State up on USC 28-26. At Little John, it's a very good win. Georgia Tech is leading Clemson 16-14. And I'm keeping an eye on that Charleston, College of Charleston game against Northeastern. 18-17. And, it's time to really start paying attention to the PGA Tour again. They're on the mainland now. Yes, going to be playing the West Coast Tour. Then they'll be moving to Florida, eventually up our way. So the Desert Classic. And today, Phil Mickelson goes out, shoots a tidy little 60.
They're on a real course, Phil. See what happens.
12 under par. Adam Long, 8 under. Curtis Luck is 8 under.
Still waiting for his first birdie in the Ryder Cup, though.
Trey Mullenix, Adam Hadwin, 7 under. Wyndham Clark and Martin Laird at 7 under.
Not a big lefty guy.
As far as some of our local guys, Sam Saunders, 4 under. Lucas Glover, 4 under. Kevin Kisner, 3 under. Jonathan Bird, 1 under. Bill Haas, even par. Scott Brown, even par. Russell Henley, even. And DJ Trahan, +1. Good to have the guys back. Good to be able to talk about these names again. Soon, it'll be time to bring back George Bryan III to Sports Talk. The thing I love about the media and newspapers in our state, if the team that they're covering does something great, does not take them long to jump on a way to make some extra money by putting out a book or a magazine to cover it. We've got that here in our hands. Untamed, special commemorative book, Clemson's Dominant Path to the National Championship, put together by the Greenville News and the Independent Mail. And one of the authors is good friend of Sports Talk, big Packer fan, Scott Kiefer, joins us here on Sports Talk. Scott, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys tonight?
It's great to hear from you. Good seeing you last night at Little John.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing like a little 9 o'clock basketball. So it's a good-looking magazine/book you guys have put together, and you did it pretty quickly, man. How do you throw that thing together so fast after winning the national championship as Clemson did?
Well, to be honest with you, it didn't all develop since the final game. What it does is essentially chronicle the season game by game. So we had, since September 1 to kind of save all this stuff and put it together in a package. Now, obviously, there's some commentary and stuff that occurred after the championship game, but we pretty much compiled it as we went along, and then at season then kind of plucked to the gems, so to speak, and put them together. And this is a good way to kind of, it's a commemorative book, so you want to go back and kind of relive the great moments of the incredible 2018 season. This is the way to do it, and as you know, our photographers, I think some of the best in the country, Art Boatwright and Josh Morgan and Ken Renard. I like to tell people that it's kind of a picture book with amazing photos spiced with some writing. So obviously some great photographs throughout this entire book.
And you and Manny worked on this thing, Manny Robinson. And here's the thing, both of you guys are true journalists. I mean, you don't root for a team. You're not anybody's pocket or anything like that. But
no,
you're putting this thing together, and if Clemson doesn't win the national championship, you've got all this wasted time and effort, right? Because it's not going to do you any good if they don't win the thing. So I don't know, maybe in the back of your mind as they're winning and winning and winning, you're thinking, well, you know what? We're going to have a chance to have this thing come to fruition, and everybody's going to benefit from it, including your company.
Sure. I mean, and last year it all went to waste. We put a lot of effort into collecting all the stuff throughout the season, and then, we get to the postseason, all of a sudden it's, okay, there's no book, So, I mean, we put a lot of effort into it as it goes along, and, hopefully it pays off in the end. But, I saw Clemson's schedule was announced the other day, and look, I mean, if they can rebuild a defense, we may be doing another book next year.
Scott, this is not just in the book, but away from the book. From Clemson, the adversity that they had to overcome this year was sizable. The quarterback controversy, Lawrence's suspension, the injury to Trevor Lawrence in the Syracuse game. What do you think was their biggest adversity spot that they had to overcome this season?
Well, to me, and kind of the defining moment was making the decision to go with Trevor Lawrence, and then in that Syracuse game, what unfolded. I mean, when Trevor, gets hurt in the second quarter, there you're thinking, oh boy, this is the worst case scenario. This is what no Clemson fan wanted to see happen. How serious is his injury? When is he coming back? Can they salvage this game? And in steps a guy like Chase Bryce and saves the day. I mean, he validated his presence and his scholarship in a matter of, one half of football. And it's just an amazing story. There's a separate little piece in this book about, Chase's big moment. And I think that was kind of the defining moment of this season. And certainly, other than maybe the Texas A&M game, the closest call they had against a league opponent.
Yeah, when Trevor went down, I thought, well, there goes Scott's book.
There you go. Yeah.
You're giving Chase Bryce some royalties off this thing?
He deserves some, doesn't he?
Yeah. Save the day.
Well, tell us this, because a lot of people, when they see a book like this, they think, man, these photographers really got lucky with some of these shots they took. But you sit around and you discuss what kind of shots you want, maybe to capture action, but also facial emotion. Did you have that type of discussions as you were putting this book together, as the schedule was unfolding?
We let the photographers do their job. I mean, they know what we want, what we're looking for, but they're veterans, and no one's better at capturing, I think, facial expressions and emotions in the game than Bart Boatwright. I mean, he's been doing it for 30 years now, and he always seems to come up every year with just photos that just wow you. They just knock you out. You say, man, what a perfectly timed photograph. He also is a big strategist. He positions himself, seems to have an uncanny knack for being in the right place at the right moment. And what he'll do is he'll put his earbuds in. He listens to the entire game broadcast on the radio because he's that much into it. He wants to know all the little subtleties that are going on and that stuff during the course of the game. So he's the man on the spot. I mean, you got to give a lot of credit to him because he's just, like I say, he's in the right spot 95% of the time. And that's why he captures such great images.
Bart is the real star of this book. I'll say that.
Yeah, the pictures are great. Pictures are great. Bart's an old pro. He knows what he's doing. Scott Kiefer from the Greenville News and the Anderson. We don't call it the Independent Mail anymore, just the Anderson Independent, I guess, right? No more. Everything's changed in the newspaper world. So, talking about Clemson and Trevor Lawrence, I mean, he truly has got, over the next 2 years, chance to be the greatest Clemson football player of all time. That's a big word or big statement because they've had some great ones. But, I mean, we're talking about Heisman Trophy. He's already the favorite to win the Heisman next year. With the tools he's going to be surrounded with on offense. He's just going to set standards in the next 2 years before he goes to the league and becomes the understudy to Aaron Rodgers for a couple of years in Green Bay.
Brady, I told you.
But he's really going to set the bar there. Even though they're going to probably, they got Pumachan coming in, and he's by all accounts a good-looking quarterback. They're probably going to get this hot shot out of California, but Lawrence is the one nationally now that everybody's going to be looking up to. There's no question about it. Even more than Tua, even more than Herbert out in Oregon, you name it. He's the one everybody's going to be measured up against.
Yeah, and look, I would count me among the skeptics because I'm not a believer until I see stuff with my own eyes. And how do you follow Deshaun Watson?
Mm-hmm.
I figured Deshaun left such a legacy. No one will ever come close to that. Well, then you start hearing tales about this kid from Georgia and how good he is and #1 quarterback in the country. But, until you see him do things, I didn't cover him in high school or anything like that. There's always a little bit of skepticism. Like, is he as really good as he's touted to be? And, look, when he steps foot on campus as a mid-year enrollee last January, I think the coaches, once he started in spring drills, knew they had a special thing on their hands. And I don't think they tipped their hat because you had an incumbent, Shelly Bryant, who, they gave the benefit of the doubt to, and, it was his job to lose.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they let it play out. But I think they knew last spring that Trevor Lawrence was going to be the man. And sure enough, he proved it time and again throughout this season. And I think made believers out of all of us, including in the postseason where, on the national stage, I think he wowed everyone.
Yeah. Hey, Scott, congrats on the book. Best of luck. Congrats to Manny as well. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you real soon.
Glad to do it. Talk to you soon, guys.
Yeah, my man. Take care. Scott Kiefer here on Sports Talk. Back in a moment.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
2 minutes left in the opening half in Starkville. It's Mississippi State, number 17 in the country, leading the South Carolina women 44-39. Gamecocks kind of been behind the 8 ball. Some foul trouble with post player Kiki Herbert-Harrigan. She's been having to deal with that. And right now they're led by the 16 of Taya Cooper, the 13 of Ty Harris. Clemson women currently about 90 seconds left in the opening half, a 29-20 lead on Georgia Tech. They're looking for their 4th consecutive ACC victory.
And College of Charleston Pro, you watching that game?
Yes, it's halftime, 23-all. Low-scoring game up in Boston.
Story, we mentioned this earlier in the broadcast, just sort of
in passing.
Yeah, mentioned it, that Nick Saban was in a bad mood. Apparently, he's lost so many members off of his staff. They have been fleeing from Tuscaloosa for whatever reason. And apparently, his offensive coordinator, Dan Enos, who left to go to Miami, did so without telling him.
Mm-hmm.
They had a staff meeting. Now, this was reported by which of the guys reported this?
Bruce Feldman of The Athletic.
Bruce Feldman, yeah. And he had a meeting, and he's sitting around with his assistant coaches who were still there, and he said, "Where the bleep is Dan?" And apparently Enos' office had already been cleared out. How does that happen and Saban not know it? Now, I don't know if this story is being embellished as somebody has told Feldman these details. Obviously he wasn't there. He's having to get it secondhand. But how does that happen in a Nick Saban organization, a guy who is known for being an organizational freak and knowing everything that's happening inside his organization? How does it happen that a guy leaves, takes another job, and cleans out his office, and you don't know? Nobody said. Did he do it in the middle of the night?
He probably did.
I'm going to ask you a protocol question. Because I know in the NFL, you have to get permission from the organization to interview assistants. I don't think that's the case. Is that the case in college? Or is it
No, I don't think you have to have permission.
Yeah.
I think there is, you give a courtesy to your boss, and you say, "Hey, I'm going to go talk to this place because it's a move up for me.
Right.
It's more money. It's, it's a title, whatever the case may be."
But you don't necessarily have to.
No. I don't think the protocol calls for any sort of permission.
Because I told you, in the NFL, it is.
And we all know when it comes to head coaches, especially in college, that there's behind the scenes negotiations taking place between third parties.
Well, that's what the coaches convention's for.
Yeah. There's a lot of that goes on. But in this particular case, I find it hard to believe that the offensive coordinator at Alabama and the quarterback's coach would take off and clean out his office, and he would not have a clue that it was going on.
Well, this is just kind of par for the course now for Saban. And like we said before, it's getting to the point now where it's looking like Alabama can't survive this constant turnover with its assistants. I mean, the brain trust is Saban. I mean, that doesn't change. But the fact of the matter is, you have to have, like Dabo has, secure branches. He has very nimble, brittle branches right now on that tree.
And, let's face it, he is getting up in age, and that's going to start to be used against him in recruiting as he goes around and visits. And as he has
kind of like
turnover,
Dabo used it on Urban Meyer too soon.
Yeah, but Urban Meyer's not that old. What is Urban Meyer, 52?
But he
used it. He used it with Jackson Carman.
He used the illness.
Yeah, right. By the way, the reports that Urban Meyer is going to go work for Fox next football season, do Big Ten games. But anyway, back to Saban. As he makes the rounds here around the country to visit with people, and that's all well and good. I mean, he still attracts an audience, and he still, when he walks in, it's pomp and circumstances at a particular school. I mean, people, get very excited. I've talked to many coaches on the day that Saban's come through, and it's like a big parade there. Everybody wants a little piece of Saban. But when you're constantly having to introduce recruits to new coaches and building that relationship with the kids, that's a difficult thing. And, Alabama right now is relying on its own history and of course the legacy of Saban now to help recruit these top line players. It's still working. It's not like they're players are bailing, and he still has enough. I mean, how many assistants has he lost to this point? About 4 or 5?
Something like that.
He lost his offensive coordinator, Loxley, to Maryland. He lost his quarterbacks coach, Enos, to Miami. He lost his defensive coordinator to the Browns, his receivers coach to Michigan, and his line coach to Georgia Tech. 1, 2,
Wasn't
3,
there a linebacker
4,
coach too?
5. I don't know. That's at least 5. That's half your staff.
Yeah.
That's half your staff. So the other half is still there and still recruiting. But, it will eventually, I think, affect you when you have this kind of turnover, and especially the relationship part building that you have to have in recruiting.
Well, I witnessed you mentioned the Saban effect on recruiting. I witnessed this firsthand with the recruitment of Hale Hench's at Jefferson City, Missouri, and he ended up becoming a very key contributor as a tight end for them, not just as a blocking guy, but also in the receiving game. And, he basically said once Nick Saban visited him at I can't remember if it was a practice or a game. I think it was a practice. He told this to me at the Sugar Bowl last year. He basically said after that point, I wasn't focused on anybody other than Alabama.
Well, the key point is
that's just one example, but I'm just saying that other examples.
By the way, one other. Hang on a second. Here's another note for Alabama on the staff. Vinny Sunseri, a former Tide safety, is back inside the football program. Oh, okay, he's just a grad assistant.
Yes.
Okay, he's not taking any sort of a major position. Coach.
See, every, and people think I'm crazy when I say this, but I'll say this: every dynasty crumbles. It's going to have to crumble. And here's the thing.
Don't tell Clemson people that.
And here's the thing about coaching. When you go to the office and you see guys, they're learning stuff and they're getting it done, and we're building something here. Hey, that is great. That is beautiful. I love this. But suddenly when you get into a program where you may have been there for a while, and all we want you to do every year is win the national championship, that does not become fun anymore. The pressure is unbearable. Guys are working just as hard as you can. And a lot of times it's just the drop of the football. I mean, it's a rover. And so guys want to go somewhere where they can build something. Then they'll see it come to fruition rather than hang on and say, all we got to do is win it every year. It's just tough to
again,
do that.
I hate to bring this back to Clemson, but it is amazing how they've been able to get that contingent of their staff. I mean, Scott, Streeter, Elliott, Venables. I would say those are the key guys that you would basically have on that staff, all to stick around and all to stay. And that is extraordinary.
We talked earlier in the program about Justin Minaya. Frank Martin has his call-in show tonight. According to John Del Blanco from the Big Spur, an update from Martin, Minaya ran on the gravity treadmill today, 1 mile at 70% of his weight, and there were no issues. Of course, Martin mentioned on Monday that Minaya's knees range of motion is where it needs to be. Hamstrings were good. The quad strength, the final hurdle, needs to be 85% as strong as the other quad to be able to be cleared for practice. They're going to have another strength test scheduled for Monday for that. So the process of getting him back on the floor and rehabbing that thing continues. You're probably, if he continues at this current pace, considering that Martin said he needs 3 or 4 practices before he can play, he's probably still, I'm going to say, almost 2 weeks away before coming back.
Somebody asked us on our Twitter at SportsTalkSC. He was asking, this is M4 Gamecock. Today on Birmingham Radio, I heard Philip Fulmer committed an NCAA violation. I missed a segment that provided the details. Any idea what they are? Well, he actually did, and it was a self-reported violation. Apparently, he was caught coaching at practice. Of course, he is now the director of athletics at Tennessee. He has been banned from 5 practices because he had one of 8 violations, 6 in football, that was basically part of a self-reporting situation from Tennessee. He was caught too much technical and tactical instruction with the players, is the way the NCAA bylaw reads. I don't think anybody saw this coming with Philip Fulmer, did we? Nobody saw this coming, right?
Absolutely
not.
not.
Somebody was waiting for it to happen. That's what it was, because who saw it and who reported it?
You, sir, are off to New Orleans?
I am.
Enjoy yourself.
I'm not sad about it.
Yep.
Not sad about it.
You're going down there to do some sightseeing? Or
I told you I'm part of Clemson's advanced team down there to go for the championship game next year.
Go ahead and find yourself a place.
No, maybe you're going to the championship game.
Leisure. No, I'm not going to the New Orleans Saints-Rams
I was going to say, don't they have a pretty big football game?
They do.
There's going to be a lot of people in that city.
Yes, and I'm one of them.
All right, you have yourself a great trip. We'll see you on Monday. Pro, we'll see you tomorrow night. Thank you, Brian Leonard. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.